Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. We are continuing our annual and perennial installation for 2024. We've planted several annual beds already. We're the beginning of May, so we're about 2 weeks after our average last frost date. I don't think we've had a frost, honestly, probably in over a month, but we're well past that and probably a hair behind where I'd like to be at this point, getting all these flowering things in. We still had some yellow pansies mixed in with these tulips in the front garden. I pulled the rest of the pansies out, and we just cut the tops out of these, out of the tulips while we're waiting for them to die back. You can fold them over and do all kinds of clever things to get the foliage out of the way, but we find that if you just cut a third out of the top of them, it still gives plenty of leaf surface for that bulb to gather up light. Tulips are, the vast majority of these will be annuals anyway for us in the South, but some will come back, and so we've left them in place. We planted some annual vinca in a video that's already gone up. The center of this bed has been converted to perennials. There's an agastache, a penstemon, and a scabiosa daisy that were put in here. That we did them all from seed. Some of the perennials can take a little longer from seed. We did some zinnias back here that I'll talk about in a minute. Those zinnias are only 3 weeks old, maybe, since we started them from seed, something like that. These perennials are a couple months old, and those zinnias have almost passed them. So it takes a little while longer to do some of these perennials from seed, but it's 90 degrees today, and so I expect this bulb foliage to really start to disappear pretty quickly. These vinca to come on and cover up, what's remaining of it, and these perennial plants will take a minute to root in before they get started. But we're basically taking this bed and doing annuals here, annuals on the driveway side, and perennials in the middle. I added 3 salvia out here along the walk. That one's called Misty. We've used it before a couple of times. That one's a really strong salvia. It'll bloom like that all summer long. We may take the flowers off of them here. There's a few things in the garden that are growing that we put in a week or two ago, and they're putting some flowers on. We'll probably just take some of those flowers off. They're not, there's no real reason to have, an annual plant this tall with a couple flowers on the top of it. If we cut it off, we can get it branched, let them continue to root in, and they'll be bigger performers later in the season for doing that. And we have this pink skyscraper. This salvia series called Skyscraper. This one's called Pink. We've used several of these before. It will fill this whole corner in over the course of the summer and just blooms like crazy. You see the pink flowers, but even the calyx is colorful on lots of these new salvias. So even when there's not a flower there, and just the spent flower where the calyx is actually is pretty decorative. This is another one. This morning, just went in the ground. We'll take the flowers off of it, get the plant putting energy into roots so that it will be a bigger performer later this summer. Flipping over to the other side, I don't know if you can see Holly way back there, but she's out here in the garden with us as always. We went with the zinnias on this side, and it's that double raspberry ripple that we've used the last few years that's just so good, and then double hot cherry. So that combo should be really striking. There's quite a few plants. Again, these were done from seed like 3 weeks ago. They already have enough roots on them to get them in the ground this morning. It's just going basically directly in compost. So again, annuals on the driveway side, annuals on the walkway side, perennials in the middle now. There's a dwarf redbud in the middle. This one's called Amethyst. It's got purple foliage. We'll talk a lot more about these dwarf redbuds coming up, but we have installed that out here in the front garden as well. There's a lot of sun out here, a whole lot of sun. And so this is probably sunnier than most redbuds would want to be in, but by putting these zinnias around the base of it, we should be able to keep the roots cool on it, and I think it'll be fine out here in the sun. Again, we move a lot of plants around in this garden, so if we find that it's, we'll know a lot about it in August, right? If it's really crispy in August, I probably wouldn't move it the first year, but if I put some sort of tree, let's say a Japanese maple or a redbud or a dogwood or something like that, if it was crispy in the first season, that may not mean a whole lot, because sometimes plants will take a minute to adapt. But certainly in the second season, if it's really looking like it's worn out in midsummer, then it's telling you it probably is in too much sun. It either needs to be underplanted to get the roots cooler, a bigger bed created maybe around it, or it needs to go to a shadier space. So the front is mostly installed at this point. We've got some holes in these new bed spaces out there, but the flowering things are in, and we're not going to race to fill in every hole in these newly created spaces in the garden. We had a lot of plants on hand. Those have going in the ground, and you guys, if you're following along, we're rapid fire putting plants in the ground. But we're going to reserve these little open spaces that we have remaining and find some things that we really want, rather than force the issue of, you know, what can I put in here today? We'd rather just make an experience out of it over the rest of this year and next year, filling in the rest of these holes.
Well, I just rose up beyond the fence to show kind of what these are going to do. These are Gomphrena, and we saw these at big bloomers, and I kind of got excited like I do. They grow up to 4 feet tall, and that's why I put them here, so they would kind of rise up and just be beautiful over here. Last year we had Tithonia, and I kind of think I'll miss it because the birds loved it so, but always looking for something a little different and just trying something new. So hopefully Gomphrena here, rising up to 4 feet tall, will make a big statement in a pretty light pink.
Holly got caught red-handed walking through the Philadelphus on the other side of the driveway at some point. She is covered in white flowers. Okay, all right, there you are. All right, we have these guide wires that come down from the telephone pole. All of our wires are above ground in a very, very old neighborhood. We only have electric that comes in from that pole. We don't have, you know, I don't have anything else that's live coming from it. But we have these guide wires that come down into the garden, and we'll usually plant some sort of annual vine on them. We've done the black-eyed Susan vines, which have the yellow flowers on them the last couple of years. These are white-eyed Susans that we just planted. So I put 5 of them out here. We don't water all that much out here. And so it'll be survival of the fittest, right? Of which one of these can make it up there. But we use an annual vine or a clematis on the other guide wire that can be cut down. So we don't want these to make it all the way up to the top of the wire and get up into the lines or anything. It's just a seasonal thing, you know, that may get 6 or 8 feet of growth out of them up the wire before the end of the season. And it, you know, masks the wire a bit and shows off some flowers. We've got some liatris out here that the rabbits have not eaten. They've eaten them in our containers. They've eaten them in 9 spaces in the garden, but these are 3 years old, and they've just flat out outpaced their ability to eat those. But they do love the liatris for some reason. There's some other cone flowers out here. There's dianthus that just keeps on getting it blooming over there. We have another group of dianthus in the back garden. You know, we typically we plant pansies, snapdragons, dianthus in the fall to last through winter and early spring, but a lot of these dianthus will just perennialize, and they'll just bloom anytime it's cool. They're blooming. Not cold, but anytime it's just kind of mild. But they'll slow down as it gets super, super hot, and then in the fall come back around and start blooming again. I put in this gold mop cypress tree form or a week or so ago in another video. I'm going to continue to limb it up in time. Vinca annuals got planted out here at the street that we didn't show. We still have about a half a cart of annuals, things we started from seed to go in the ground, but a few other spots that we've added some things to. There's some zinnias that were done from seed. This is a Starlight Rose zinnia. There's some strawberries left and right of it. By some miracle, we're actually seeing a few strawberries before the rabbits have a chance to get them this year. There's some trailing lobelia that we're trying actually for the first time. They were for containers to weep down over the side of some containers, but the few that were left are in that little patch along the entryway to the back garden. This is the vegetable garden. Went in a video maybe 2 weeks ago, and everything is just jumping in there. I've actually got to get in there and get the tomatoes going through the cattle panels. They're grown enough where I should have already started weaving them through there, but I haven't quite yet. There's a few weeds in there as well, but overall it looks pretty good. Put a few melonpodium this little space along the edge of the vegetable garden is an herb garden, but it also has a few ornamentals in it too. There's a few dwarf butterfly bushes, that butterfly candy. The butterfly candy butterfly bushes, there's 4 of them in here, and you can see we're probably 2 weeks away from having color on them. Actually, there's 5 of them, all 5 of the butterfly candy series. But I think, we're 2 or 3 weeks. We hit 90 yesterday, so it won't be long before the butterfly bushes are thinking about flowering. And then just some here and there. What we'll always do, we have these dedicated annual beds like we just saw out front, the big one that went in, and then a couple stripes along a couple of the edge places and out in the front garden where the paths go through. Those are kind of dedicated annual spaces. And of course the vegetable garden is kind of a dedicated annual space. Those are the spaces where we're kind of treating the whole space with compost or whatever. But then we'll come back into these beds with the little extra few seedlings we have and take a little trowel of compost and mix it in, pull the mulch back, mix a little compost in, and put these individual annuals here and there. And pretty successful with that. Actually, they grow just as well as they do anywhere else. But we do get that mulch back just a bit from them. I think once we get kind of in between where the spring flowering things are kind of done, some of the bulb foliage needs to die back to get it back to kind of prime, and then the summer things will start flowering. And then all the chartreuse, that's when these things like the weeping redbud really show off out here in the garden, is after the peonies are almost done for us. But these foliage color things will now kind of take over, and then the annual flowers. And that combo, for the summertime, will create that clown college design that I always talk about. But all the herbs look great. I think the garden is really looking pretty sharp with a few projects left to do. And if you're following along here with the channel, you will have heard an announcement a few days ago that we're actually going to invite folks into the garden. And so we're looking forward to that. Middle to late June, June 22nd is actually when that is happening. And there'll be more information about that over the next few weeks. But I think that if you do have the opportunity, if you live close by and you have the opportunity to come by and see it, that you'll be blown away, because I don't think the camera can really capture all of the texture, and can capture the color, pretty well. You see, things like this, but it doesn't necessarily capture all the little, the minute details, that are throughout the garden here. So we look forward to hosting folks. And Steph and I have one more spot to plant here at the end of this trail that comes in, from the driveway. What I'm looking for when we're trying to decide, we've got some extra annuals left over after we've done our kind of dedicated annual beds. And I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll put color at the end of any lane. So as you're coming through one path, the end of that path where you make a decision whether you're going right or left, there'll be a big swath of color there. So you make another turn and you're greeted at the end of that line with something that draws people in. And as an example of that, here, we have with the salvia and the dianthus at the end of this trail. And then, over on the other side, other annuals have been added as well. So that's kind of the idea, is that every turn that you make, there's some line of sight at the end of it it's interesting and draws you toward it. So we're going to jump in and finish planting a few more things. There are still a few annuals and perennials left over on the cart that I think we'll just get them into the ground and then cover them later in future tour videos, because it's going to be here and there kind of a thing, just to fill in some gaps and holes here and there. It's an interesting season here where we gained all this new space in the front turf area, plus the front foundation area, plus this back corner area that you will have seen a video before you see this one on planting it. But there's still gaps in those spaces, which is great for us because it's an opportunity to shop later. And I don't want to feel rushed to just fill something in to make it, appear finished in some way. I'd rather go out in our travels and find something that's interesting, or get something from a friend, or get something that has a story to add into the remaining spaces that are in this garden. Holly, why are you licking a rock? Why are you licking that rock? You got plenty, you don't have enough salt? You need some salt in your diet? Normally she doesn't do any silly things like that, but it was hard to concentrate while I was watching her lick a rock over here. It's a perfectly clean rock, it looks like. So apparently she doesn't have enough salt in her diet right this minute. I don't know. Well, we'll have to work on that, I guess. The last little space here for this video, there were 3 different salvias that went in with some basil, all 3 of which we started from seed. And the thing here is, all 3 of those are in the Lamiaceae, or the mint family. And so we have a lot, you know, this herb garden here, and then a lot of the annuals and perennials that we do in this garden are in that plant family, because that's the thing that the rabbits won't devour immediately. So we put, you know, as an example, a few petunias in the ground over here in that same night. They ate enough of them to slow them down and damage them. They're not killing them, but they're just never allowing them to get going. Like if they just allow them to get this big and then came in and started eating them some, they would be, we could share, right? But they won't do that. They'll eat them when they're this big, down to there. So we're really concentrate on lots of salvia, again, lots of salvias and lots of things in that herb family and that mint family, because those things, you know, the rabbits just don't, they just walk right past them without thinking about them. There you go. We are adding color. It's full on color being added to the garden here, and we hope to see some of you on June 22nd. Thanks for watching.